Hi, it's Brody again from Vocal Fit Training Studio. Happy to contribute to another newsletter with Rapid Fitness. And this time we're going to talk about starting a new routine, developing a new habit, and this time of year coming up, whether it's coming out of a lockdown, whether it's just a New Year's resolution. It's a big topic this time of year. I'm going to cover it in a very basic way, just because I could talk about these words on this board for a long time. So if you have questions, we want to hear them. And I will answer all of them. Like, if you in the Facebook group, or if maybe I'll answer it in another newsletter if it's a very big question. But this is something that very quickly becomes very personal. So we'll just cover it as simple as can be at first. With one of the simpler ways to approach that is distinguishing between a habit and a routine. So habit, in psychology, to be honest, we're usually viewing a habit through a negative lens, right? It's a bad habit someone wants to change. We'll talk about a little bit of both, but the best example would be, substance abuse, whether that's tobacco or alcohol or something like that. So usually a habit, there's a trigger, right? Something happens, it's after 5, you want to drink, you see someone smoking, it gives you a craving, and then triggers lead to behaviors. So if you're trying to change a bad behavior, or if you're trying to change a bad habit, then you try to look for actionable alternative behaviors, something that gets your mind kind of changing gears. Is one of the most basic ways to start working on it, trial and error. And then the behavior will lead to a reward. So the reward obviously of substance abuse is temporary relief of some sort of distress. And if you're looking at exercise, it kind of becomes its own reward. That's not always enough for people. But if you're going to look at this through the lens of starting exercise, one of the first mistakes I see people make is that all their triggers are negative, right? So I'll ask a client of mine, if you're sitting at home and you're just going to self-motivate all of a sudden, something's going to make you think, I want to go to the gym, or I want to go for a run, what kind of things will be your trigger? And they'll almost always say, I'll see someone, on Instagram who looks the way I should look, or I'll see someone doing something I think I should do, or I'll catch my reflection and I will feel bad about myself. So that's already a trigger that is much more likely to lead to a self-soothing behavior, which exercise is not. Okay, exercise will make you feel better, but it's not self-soothing behavior, not really, because it's controlled discomfort, right? So if you're one of those people that I've met, tons of you, no judgment or anything, but if all your triggers are negative and viewing yourself at a deficit, you got to create a swap there. You got to start thinking about yourself as someone you care about, and as exercise is a version of taking care of that person you care about, right? That's one of the most basic things I like people to try to make a switch with as soon as they can. The behavior, it doesn't have to be a big behavior. You don't need to, if the behavior you're trying to trigger is a 3-hour full body workout, I don't know how you do it either. So, start really small. Just maybe your behavior is just getting into the gym and hopping on an elliptical to start, right? And then you build on that. And the reward, like I said, to some degree, exercise is a bit of its own reward. Very rare people without some sort of complicated, medical issue actually feel worse after working out than before. Usually people feel better about it. But don't be shy to dangle a reward in front of yourself too. Even personally, I'll often have a little more carbs on a workout day, which I enjoy eating. And as long as my caloric goals are organized around that and I build that in, that's okay. And that does help me feel more motivated to develop that habit, okay? So lots of room for questions there. We'd love to hear them, but I'm going to move on to the routine. You can see how dense this stuff can get, right? So a routine is a little different. A routine is something that in psychology, usually we're viewing that through a positive lens. So it's something someone wants to see themselves do. And one of the first things I encourage people to do, if you're trying to start a new routine, very basic, externalize as much as possible, right? We externalize tons of stuff in our society. Very few people expect themselves to wake up without an alarm clock. Very few people don't use some sort of calendar app. If you build a 2-hour block in the middle of your day where a workout's going to fit, that doesn't mean you're going to do it, but it does make you more likely to do it, right? If you externalize through a workout partner, right? That's awesome. That's just one more external factor that's holding you accountable. If you have the means, a trainer, obviously is a good way to do it, but even an online trainer these days, there's different ways you can access different types of accountability. Starting an actual concrete program that has daily goals is a great way to externalize it. So just don't put too much pressure on yourself. Take as much off yourself as you can. So these phrases here, minimum enjoyable action, that's MEA. Tons of people, that kind of goes back to the not a very big behavior thing, right? For me, running, I never regret running, but I really don't like it, and I almost never want to do it before I do it. But, I often find that if I just tell myself, okay, I'm just going to do a garbage, 10-minute run. If I'm out there and in 10 minutes I don't want to go back, and in 10 minutes I still want to go back to my house, I'll just go right back, and I won't be 10 minutes away, right? But that usually does get me, once you start, you're like, okay, this is actually kind of enjoyable. I found the minimum. Maybe I could enjoy this more if I keep adding on to it. But just start small is a version of what that's saying. And same thing, anything is greater than nothing. A is greater than N. Anything really is greater than nothing. I've had clients that I remember they started their routine, doing the smallest thing. Like literally it's better to pick something you're basically already doing. Like force yourself to drive past the gym on the way home even. Don't even stop. Like just make the goal to drive past it. One of these days you'll be like, I'm already here. I've got the time. They've got a good protein shake in the vending machine, whatever. Like it'll get you in there eventually if you just keep building onto it. But if you hold your standards too high and you don't think anything is better than nothing, it's that much less likely you're going to engage and get started. And the last thing, I don't even know. Okay, trap/paradox. So this is a way, it's a complicated way of treating or of addressing routine, to get people to stop having anxiety about something. And it's not maybe always recommended you do this without a coach, but like one way is to trap yourself. Okay, so this is a fairly extreme intervention. You should definitely try everything else before you try this. But one version of this is you write someone a check, and for whatever. It can be for $100 and they're going to donate it to something, or they're going to maybe, they're just going to take it. Like some people even say they have to burn $100 bill that you gave them, and whatever works, okay? But you give that to them, and if you don't send them, a selfie of you doing whatever it is you're committed to doing in your routine by a certain time, they're either lighting that $100 bill on fire, or they're cashing that check to be donated to something that you're glad is getting the money, but the number hurts, right? You got to pick a number that hurts. It's fairly extreme. I basically never see this fail, but I also don't use it very much. But it's one of the more extreme ways to try to get yourself into a routine if these things aren't working. The last one is a paradox. So this is kind of a little bit complicated when it comes to exercise. But what you do is you actually choose to do the opposite of what you're intending to do. So what that means maybe is, a person who's having, for example, panic attacks, you actually tell them like, okay, try to give yourself a panic attack on purpose. Go into the situations that trigger you and decide to have one. Try to force yourself to have one. Very rare people can force themselves to have a panic attack. So what I just said is not sufficient to coach you through what I'm suggesting for a panic attack. You should work with a therapist for that. But you can paradox yourself with some other behaviors. Like people can correct their sleep patterns through paradox. Instead of trying so hard to fall asleep, you actually try hard to stay awake very regularly. That will work. Again, there's risks with that. So you should probably be working with at least a coach, if not a therapist or trainer, with these sorts of things. But just finding those ways of trapping yourself, intentionally not putting yourself in situations where you're going to have the outcome you're looking for. Sometimes can kind of flip it. Like a kid who sleeps in their closet because they're scared of monsters, right? It's basically exposure therapy. So you go to the gym and plan to do nothing. You go to the gym and plan to just text or play games or, check out people that you're attracted to, whatever works. So that's the most basic way of doing that. Again, there's lots of personalization, lots of complexity that can come in at any given stage. But we'd love to hear your questions, and if you try all these things and they don't work and you're looking for more specific things, then we could hear about that too. Rapid Fitness obviously has people available in that area. If anyone's up in Canada, shout out. You can definitely find me. But hopefully everyone just starts one thing that's just improves their quality of life a little bit this year. I know Matt's a big fan of 1% better, and you know what? 1% counts, because anything is better than nothing. All right, so take care, happy habit formation, and good luck with your routines.